anyone can look at this video. Okay, so Thomas is gonna come. He's gonna make a brief introduction. But for now, I wanted to present you all. Probably you've been talking already. But I wanted to present Ronald Sistek, and Flor as well. And basically, we want to welcome both of you to the studio second term kickoff. And for you just to know, today we invited Ronald as a special guest, and he will give an initial talk about how do we create the conditions for life to emerge through innovation. What kind of innovation is needed in a damaged planet, basically. Ronald is from Chile, and in the past years, he has deepened in methodologies of transformative learning for regenerative project management. So thank you, Ronald. Thank you, Flor, as well. Then we will give a brief introduction about you. And now, Thomas, the space is yours to give a brief introduction as well.
Thank you very much, Jose. Thank you, everyone. From FabCity Foundation, we think, like, as you all know, it's a kind of spin-off that emerged from the Global Fab Lab Network that connects Fab Labs that are distributed all around the world or different places on the planet. For example, and this goes from the southernmost Fab Lab in the world, from Católica University of Chile, that is located in Puerto Williams, up to the north in North Europe. Also, we cross Fab Labs that are located in all different continents with more than 4,000 labs. This is quite interesting because we have the capacity with labs located inside universities, inside public spaces, and now we have defined the capacity to fabricate almost everything, right? Almost anything. And this supposes extremely rigorous responsibility, an ethical responsibility of why we have to fabricate almost everything and how we have to fabricate almost everything. So this impacts somehow the educational levels of design schools, the educational level of engineering schools, of sociological schools, and of course also from professional practices. So what we do in the FabCity Foundation is that we try to connect and to give a new layer to the Global FabNet network of knowledge, of understanding of the environment, of understanding of context, of understanding that every technology that we design, even that is in a very small exercise, undergrad exercise or senior or professional exercise, should be always linked or linking the let's say, or promoting the interspecies well-being. So in this context is where the work of Ronald is very aligned, not only with what we promote in FabCity Foundation, but also with what all Fab Labs in the rest of the world are promoting. In this talk, we are here around 20-something people, but this is going to be broadcast live to the Global Fab Lab Network. So this material will be accessible to all of us. It was a huge finding to know Ronald. With Jose, we were discussing which content, which other content we can give. And suddenly, after not so many talks, like actually, Jose know Ronald from before, his work. And when we start hearing him reading his work, we thought that it was a very important person that could contribute to the work that you have been doing and with the work that all the Fab Labs in the world we have been doing. So Ronald or Jose, I don't know who will do the, let's say, the much more formal than me introduction. I only give the sense of context. So Ronald, welcome and thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. And thank you for for your work.
Thank you for that presentation, Tomas, and I'm very glad to be here and to know that most of you have English as a second language, so that's a very good notice. And thank you, Josefina and Flor, because you are the ones that contacted me first. So, well, I'm very happy to share some findings I've been working on for the last years. And this talk, I think, will last almost half an hour to 40 minutes, and we can open afterwards a conversation. So I will share my screen. So feel free to share your comments, hopefully in real time feedback in the chat, and whatever question emerges, please feel free to share it so we can capture it afterwards and start this conversation. So this is a presentation that is some parts in Spanish and some parts in English. For me, when we speak about innovation, it's very relevant to speak about regeneration as well, because if we are in an overshoot and collapsed world, and that's at the core of my work. So how do we innovate in a damaged planet was a very interesting question to start with. Something about myself, we human beings change our identity each time we change our role. So we have multi-identities over time. That's what a human being is in cognitive approach. So I want to share two of my own identifications. So the first one is that we are a manifestation of nature having a human experience. And that is very relevant because we are an emergent property of nature through coevolution of thousands and millions of years. So this is very important to consider when we think about anything we do as a human being. And the second one is that we are social fields having at times an individual experience. And this is very relevant as well because we are social animals, and reflection emerges through these interactions. So these are two statements that are at the core of my work. Then I hope you have read Bucky Fuller's work, and he says something like this: don't try to change a system, create a new one that makes the previous one obsolete. And this is interesting because what we will share today is this idea of we are always evolving, and it's in our hands to create the conditions for life to emerge. So when we speak about this, I think that there's a layer that's relevant to consider when we learn something, which is that the layer beyond actions and theory is a paradigm layer. So when we foster learning, we should foster it as paradigm shifts. And when we speak about paradigms, paradigms have many dimensions. And these three are three dimensions that are at the core of any paradigm. And the first one, and when we speak about change and theories of change, we have the praxis layer, which is represented by the hands. And when we start building a new system, we have to stop and slow down the things that doesn't work anymore. So this aspect of a paradigm is very relevant, you know, the slowing down. And then the new ways of doing emerges. So the praxis is that's why the praxis is so relevant. And the praxis normally is supported by the new ideas and structures. So ideas and praxis are very close. But when we speak about paradigms that we want them to continue over time, we need this third issue that is the ethical part of the paradigm. And if you reflect for a moment in your own memories, when you have had huge changes in your life, the ethos and the underlying principles change, and when they change, the whole paradigm change. You know, because it's very otherwise it's very common to go back to the previous paradigm. You know? So when we speak about head, heart, and hands, we are speaking about paradigm dimensions. So every paradigm grows till it gets to the point of a shivering, and then it decays. And when the shivering emerges at the same time a new possibility of a new paradigm. So this is called the double loop theory. You can research about this through Deborah Fries and Margaret Whitley. They have lots of work around this. And this is a very interesting way and simple way to understand theories of change. Yeah? So we have a dominant paradigm and we have an emergent paradigm all the time. And this evolves over time. So if we look at the present moment in the planet, we can say that we are in a huge shift of paradigms. You know? But this is not the first one. If we see the last 60,000 years of human experience, we can say that this is almost a third very relevant one. And when I say this, comes to my mind the first two, because the first great turning was a turning that shifted the way we experience life on Earth. And it was a change from the hunter-gatherers to the farmers paradigm. So, and that emerged almost 10 to 12,000 years ago. And when that emerged, we stopped doing things as hunter-gatherers, and we started to be settled in some places, and then some patterns emerged that are very relevant to share. And these patterns that emerged are at least four that I think are very interesting to share, because this first great turning, some authors call this the great forgetting, because it seems that we forgot the things that emerged at that time. So what emerged were the first hierarchies with social differentiation, and that started almost with priests, and then with kings, and with commercialization, had a very specific social field, which was fear. We replaced trust to fear, with fear. And if you think of our institutions, we can see this pattern very present still after 12,000 years. And then the other pattern that emerged was the suppression of the feminine. And if we see these three patterns, hierarchies, fear, and the suppression of the feminine, what happened in our daily understanding of the world was that when we were hunter-gatherers, we belonged to the nature. But when we settled in cities and we start growing we lost the movement and we start growing in the amount of people. We started a story of separation, which is the separation between human and nature. And this is very relevant because we have 12,000 years of experience of separation. So when we became farmers, that was on one side a good notice, because we started to understand that we could accumulate some products, but within that accumulation emerged many other psychological and economical and economic new expressions. We replaced the economy of the gift economy, and the economy of like short-time incomes to long-time incomes and accumulation and transaction. And that changed our perception forever. So, and then, so we have thousands of years of this first great turning. And then came the second great turning, which was the shift of this paradigm of being farmers to what some authors express as an industrial growth society. And the paradigm that underlies this industrial growth society is to grow in an infinite way in a finite planet. You know? So what emerges with a lot of multiple expression is an overshoot state and the loss of ecosystemic dignity. When I speak about ecosystemic dignity, is the loss of nature's dignity and human dignity as well, because the overshoot state is not only ecological, it's also social and individual. So we're in a state of overshoot and collapse in these days, and so this second great turning emerged almost in the 1400s. So we have some centuries of experience of this, and the deepest experience is over the last 100 or 150 years. So, and this is very interesting, anyone who thinks that exponential growth is possible forever on a finite planet is either crazy or an economist. And this is Kenneth Boulding said this, which is an economist. So this is very interesting to understand, you know, because what we learned at the university was that the economic problem was the multiple needs and the finite resources, and that is a very partial understanding of the world. So here we are in this great turning that is happening now, which will show us what is the potential of human beings. This is a shift from industrial growth society to we don't know what. I hope it is a regenerative new paradigm where we can reconnect with the interconnection and interdependence of all phenomena. So here you can see three perspectives of this state of overshoot and collapse. On the left-hand side is the overshoot day that comes earlier each year, and the trick is that we start the 1st of January as if nothing has happened before. Then at the center you have the planetary boundaries approach. This is from the Stockholm Resilience Center. And on the right-hand side, you have the 5 cycles that sustains complex life on Earth. And if you see, if we reflect upon those, we can see that we have the 5 in terrible conditions. As you see here, the first great turning happened through thousands of years. The second great turning has happened through centuries. Now, the third great turning, the turning that we are embedded in, has to happen in no more than 1 or 2 decades. So, welcome to the most challenging years in the history of human presence on Earth. So here we are, and this is the first thing that the first point that I wanted to share with you today. So if you feel pain, please share the pain that you're feeling in the chat, because it's very important to express our emotions of what is really happening nowadays. So in the next years, we will see more changes than in any other decade that is registered. So that's the challenge we are facing now. Okay, so the second point is to share something about regeneration, the framework of regeneration, and some reflections about innovation and what kind of innovation should we consider when we innovate. So we know this, everything is connected, like the blood that unifies a family. Whatever happens to the earth happens to the daughters and sons of the earth. The human being did not weave the web of life, he's only a strand in it. Whatever does to the web, he does to himself. So this is Ted Perry's. And this is very interesting, because if we don't integrate again with nature, if we don't recover the non-separation aspect, the wholeness that we experience with nature, it will be very difficult for human beings to keep living in a dying planet. So this is the regenerative framework. I don't know if you knew it before, but this is originally developed by J.T. Lyle in his book Regenerative Development, I think it's called. And then this was taken by Bill Reed from the Regenesis group. And then there are some things that I introduced in this one. So this framework is very interesting, because on the horizontal line, you have this journey from the generative understanding to regenerative understanding. And on the vertical line, you have this more energy required the ¿cómo se llama? When you go down, and then the less energy or the capture of energy if you go up. So if you go down, you increase your entropy, and if you go up, you increase your syntropy, which is the tendency to create some kind of order. Okay. So this is the story of human development. When we started with a conventional approach, which is that everything that is just in the border of the laws is conventional, and it creates lots of damage. It needs lots of resources, and it needs a lot of energy to be produced. So that's conventional things, and it demands lots of negative externalities, which are subsidized by nature, by future generations, and by the communities, and the most fragile communities. So if we go up through this line, and if you see the left low quadrant, it's very based in a technical system. It's based in efficiency, in doing things right, lots of technologies and techniques, in fragmented thinking, and the core thing to measure is quantity. Then emerged this idea of green or ecological approach, which is a little better than the conventional, but it's not enough until we come to the sustainable approach and the sustainable development, which in practice means the sum zero. You compensate the damage, and you get in the ideal sustainable approach sum zero, which in a world in overshoot and collapse state, it's not enough. So what do we have beyond the sustainable understanding is a thing that some people call restorative approach, which means less initial cost, less operating cost, and less energy required. And it's more in the understanding of how living systems work. So instead of a technical system approach, we have this understanding of living systems as a core pattern, So, and what's the difference? It introduces the qualitative understanding. It introduces pattern thinking. It introduces the living and the whole systems approach. And it introduces, beyond effective, doing the right things instead of doing things right. So this is a really new paradigm in how things should work. And then beyond restorative, we have this regenerative understanding, which is designing as if we were nature, which is a very different approach as designing, mimicking nature, or fostering human technology through design. See? So when we speak about innovation, we can not be only part of the incremental innovation, just doing things better or doing things right. Disruptive innovation is no longer needed. It is important, but disruption will not necessarily solve the huge problems we are in. So what we need probably is something that some authors call transformative innovation, which means that we can be at the same time transforming the world we are embedded in and transforming ourselves within those innovations. So there's an interesting reflection between adaptive innovation and acceptive innovation. When you accept, you really bring this idea of changing the purpose of what was invented before. It's not only this idea of incremental and adaptation of the same technology. So this is the trajectory of ecological design. Then we have three horizons that can be possible. One is the business as usual that is losing its fit for purpose. Is it worth conserving the world that we are embedded in? Then you have this second possibility, which is designing a viable future. And this one, which is the transition between one paradigm and the emergent paradigm, is how do we work through transformative innovation to have a shared vision to a viable future. Then these three horizons that are expressed in the previous image is, well, how do we cope with a world that is dying? How do we create at the same time a world that is viable? And how we do this transition? Three core questions. So is adaptive innovation what is needed, or is acceptive innovation what is needed? And how can we foster acceptive innovation? So, and then the other thing that is relevant is, what is your role in this? Here we have another image of the two-loop theory. So this is the dominant paradigm. This is the emergent paradigm. This is the transition. We don't know the shape that it will have. But there are at least four roles that are very relevant. When the dominant paradigm shivers, there are the innovators that start creating the new. And then there are people inside the system that stabilizes the system, working from inside the system. Then there are another role which is very relevant, that are the creators of the new paradigm within innovation. And there are this fourth role, which are the protectors of the emergence of a new paradigm. But the protectors are people that have power in the dominant paradigm. And if we see clearly, each moment emerges new protectors in the dominant paradigm. And that it's a very good notice. So if I could say something about what are the principles that connect and what are the patterns that connect us in this state of the present moment, I would say that innovation should simplify your life, because given the increasing complexity and increasing uncertainty, we should try to simplify our lives, and the innovation should have something to say about this. Now, innovation has to do with reconnecting with the natural world, how we dissipate this idea of separation. Then everything is easier if we build community to foster the solutions that will emerge for this possibility of a viable world. Then the work that underlies innovation should be fostering ecosystemic dignity. What are the new needs of human expressions of life? And then how do we do this? There are 3 patterns, 4, I think, that are very, very useful to reflect. The first is creativity. How do we create the conditions for creativity to emerge? And in my experience, the best way is to create social fields of trust. So trust is another pattern that will connect us in this challenge. Then humbleness. We have to understand that we cannot do this alone. So we have to keep on learning and to be humble through the understanding that we have to know over the previous knowledge. And then maybe the last one is to how do we reconnect with our own rhythm and the rhythm of this living planet. So another world is not only possible, it's on the way. On a quiet day, I can hear its breath. Okay, so, and that was the second point. I will stop here and if we can start reflecting together, that would be great. I don't know, Josefina or Flor or Tomás, if you have captured some. Here they are.
Thank you very much, Ronald. I would pass to the audience if anyone wants to make a question or comment or thoughts from the presentation.
Me, Ronald, hello.
We can hear you, Victor.
Yeah, hi, Ronald. Actually, thank you very much for the information. It was really useful. I didn't know about it. Actually, there are many topics you talked about, and I didn't know. No? Actually, I believe that's important information. For example, if I want to develop a project related to education, I think those topics are really important. Here in Peru, I don't think it's, I mean, they don't teach that to kids, no? So thanks to you, actually, I would like to propose new ideas, no? Because I believe that through education, we can transform the society, no? And also, you were also talking about the paradigm. I don't know how to pronounce it, paradigma, no? And it's interesting because, for example, the nature, no, it's not considered like a stakeholder. No? Thanks to the master, I've learned, no, that nature, that animals, that the planet should also be considered when a person is going to develop a project. No? And most of the time, it's not considered. No, it's like a secondary thing. No, and that's when the problems begin. No, so actually, thank you. No, actually, I'm writing everything and learn a lot.
Thank you for that comment, Victor. Yes, it's a great challenge to introduce nature as a stakeholder.
I have a question. Okay.
Please. Yes.
Yeah. Because the framework make me think of the Web3 because I'm a product manager in Web3 industry, and the Web3 industry call itself will replace the Web2, call itself the future. but I just wonder if we put so much efforts on the digital thing or on the virtual world is a wrong direction. I don't know. So may I ask you your perspective about the Web3 or digital or virtual world? Yeah.
Wow, that's a huge question, Leng, because I think the meta crisis that we are in involves a series of exponential experiences. One of those is exponential tech. You know, we have technology growing in exponential curves. So my reflection is that you know, we have the after World War II, we have nuclear weapons, and we know what nuclear weapons can make. You know, so we have been learning after the World War II how to not use that technology. You know, so technology itself is not wrong or right. I think it's how you use it to foster a viable world. And I think, well, we're here not traveling because we have tech, you know. So I think that's why the ethical part of the paradigm is so relevant, because we have to consider the ethical implications of whatever we do in whatever area we're working in. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Ronald, yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I'm connected with my phone. I have a very limited internet connection. Well, thank you again for the presentation. And I would like to ask you like one question related with the role of design somehow, right? Because everything is becoming so technical at some point, in which universities are training people to produce things, or to, let's say, to be prepared with a certain profile, to have certain skills to deploy themselves in the real or economical world, let's say. And the real world, I quote it because it's actually based, that real world, that reality is solely based on the actual productive and economical system. There's not like kind of a formal training for alternative ways of, you know, ways of production, of ways of economy. So everything emerges from a different place. It's like a kind of from the lateral sides, right? From society, from the grassroots. And in that way, everyone is a designer. Everyone has the power to design whatever they want to design their lives, actually, to design their relationships, to design the way how they dress in the morning. Actually, so very simple things that you mentioned, like at the end, simplify your day, your life. So what do you think that should be like the role of the future designer somehow, if everyone is a design? Do you think that we have like somehow over designed the world? From my perspective, this mechanization in between cause and effect have led us into this endless point in which we have a lot of novel entities, a lot of things that surround us, but we haven't designed our surroundings. So what do you think about the future role of the education, maybe, or practice? What do you see in this interspecies well-being role?
Yeah, that's a huge question, Thomas.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and very interesting. I think the you know, waste is a design problem, you know. So I think I'm stuck. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you very good.
Yeah. Great.
Perfecto.
You know, yeah. So waste is a design problem, you know, and we used to over design everything. So one reflection that I was speaking with a very good friend, my permaculture teacher, and design is very embedded in permaculture, and the question was: is really design the core thing? And I told him I really don't know, because for me the pattern that is the underlying pattern of most of the things is creativity, and creativity for me is an emergent property of a specific cycle of increasing attention, and then having a process of stillness. When you have a process of stillness, and if you reflect, the greatest understandings in human experience emerges in stillness practices. When you go to when you have a shower, when you have a meditation, when you go for a walk, when you go to the bathroom. So I think creativity is at the core of the process. So that's one thing, and the other thing is that I think, at least in my experience, most of the latest understanding in my learning processes have emerged from the borders, as you said. So I think there's a huge challenge inside academy to introduce as fast as the academy can these like new understandings of how the world works, and what are the abilities and capacities that a designer should have. Many people speak about the over specification of design, and I think we should recover the capacity of being generalists, and understanding how to design, understanding the wholeness of what is the niche that design will be embedded in. So yes, simplicity. I don't know if simplicity is the answer, but maybe complexity. You know, because oversimplification is not good either. You know, so how can we develop the capacity of creating new abilities to cope with the understanding of the wholeness, and understanding how nature works, in order to be able to design as nature, where there's no waste, where there's always the understanding of the potential and the essence. You know, when we speak about regeneration, we really see the essence of the context, because everything is context dependent and not context free. So I think design will have to cope with the context dependency and the exploration of the whole potential of the solution. So I think it's a very interesting question to stay in the reflection, I think, of the whole experience of these masters. Yeah? Because design, as you said, we design almost everything. So I think there are some like patterns that we have to consider.
Yes, but there's a new factor here, because there's an urgency. If we were talking about this same topic like 20 years or 30 years ago, well, we will have the same discussion. But then what happened here is that we need to change like yesterday. And there's a lot of discussion around me that it's about, yes, but we need to focus on the youth, for example, like going to like very young school and try to make the change from there. But then to create a change from there, it will take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and then we don't have that kind of time. So what is your opinion about that emergency, that time issue with the designing and the creation and the change?
Yeah. Great question, Annie. Yeah, you see, I started speaking about this almost 15 years ago. So I'm really crazy about speaking about this, you know, and this urgency and the state of emergency. And so I think there is now a state of consciousness that I didn't see 15 years ago. And I hope that change in human awareness would accept, you know, that's my dream. But I'm with you in this issue that we have not very much time. So one why building communities of practice is so relevant nowadays, because through communities of practice you can really be able to commit to this direction of travel, which is regeneration, and you can cope with lots of experimentation. You know, when you have a complex system and the urgency we have, there's an interesting way to manage complexity. Defining, so if I had to design a strategy, I would say you have three relevant things. The first is to understand direction of travel. Some people call this vision. Some people call this.
I'm losing you, Ronald.
Oops.
Ronald, te estamos perdiendo.
Really?
Maybe, Ronald, if you turn off the camera.
Mm.
Yep. Okay. Do you hear me
Yeah,
better?
better.
Yes.
Perfect.
Sorry. So what I'm saying is that if we have to manage a complex system and manage the urgency, we have three things to be aware about. The first one is the direction of travel. The second one is understanding the present moment of the organization, of the community, of the problematics that you have. And then the third one is to design what is called the adjacent possible, which is the best, the maximum, or the maximum potential that you can go through in the next 3 months. That's called the adjacent possible. And the adjacent possible, you can deliver safe to fail experiments. Those are called catalyzers. And then one of the catalyzers, or two or three, will be beneficial. And when you find that, you can amplify those beneficial catalyzers. You see? So when we speak about complexity, and when we speak about urgency, it's time to recover our ability of experimentation. And what is beneficial, you can amplify it. If it's not beneficial, you dilute it. See? So that's a very interesting strategy to introduce to design. Not only work with one prototype, but multiple prototypes in parallel. That's one way to increase the pace in which we can discover new things.
It's quite interesting because not long ago I built a formation about biomimicry, and they actually take the nature as a mentor and has evaluation. So they can take the nature as the baseline of the quality of your service or your product. So in what you said, it's quite interesting because your solution or your prototype that you do, you can actually evaluate them from a nature perspective and to see if it's good or bad.
Yes, I'm currently working in how can we measure the regenerative impact. And it's not easy because it's context dependent, And the other thing I work with organizations, is that I'm not working anymore with books that where some people study some organizations that have good results, and then they deliver from that a recipe, and that is called practice-based theory. What I do is that I go to nature. I've been studying nature for the last 15 years, and I see patterns that have worked in nature for millions of years. And I take those patterns and I create theories based in nature, and then I introduce them to social fields. And I have had very, very interesting results, very good results. And that is called theory-based practice, but with theory based in nature, because there we have there's the whole wisdom, So that's a very interesting strategy.
Can you give us an example of one of these?
Of course, I've been researching about what are the conditions for human collaboration to emerge. And when you go to understand symbiosis, you can see in human language that symbiosis emerges when the conditions of the soil provokes that, you know. So in human, what I've been watching in hundreds of groups is when you create the conditions of trust to emerge in a social field, collaboration emerges in a genuine way, and not only to be able to subsist, you know, but in a genuine way. So, and when a group collaborate in a genuine way, the results are exponential. And that's what I've been seeing for the last 8 years, working with human groups. And that what that creates is the conditions for commitment to emerge. So there's a very interesting thing about a pattern that is built through human connection that creates the conditions for trust to emerge, trust that creates the conditions for collaboration to emerge, and collaboration that creates the conditions for commitment to emerge. So connection, trust, collaboration, and commitment is a pattern that we see in nature in the process of symbiosis. And then you have many examples of when an ecosystem doesn't fit in a climate change. What species do is that they recombine. You know? So they decouple and recouple. So when a human group is not working, you can decouple and recouple them. And because it's much easier to change human systems through changing the connections than to try to change the person, you know, change people. And that is more manipulation. So when you need to change a system, you have to concentrate in changing the connections. And that comes from nature. You know, decoupling and recoupling is part of the most interesting phenomena in nature. So that's another example. So it's very useful to go more to the garden and see how nature works, and then come back to human systems and try to introduce those patterns that you see, than having books of recipes that doesn't work in another context that the context that was studied in that book. See? So I think this other strategy is theory-based practice based on nature's theory.
I am also curious, have you researched the role of female in those connections? And
Yes.
how do you, because in your first chart, you explained that, of course, there was a period when female was depowered, and now it's slowly raising. So
Yeah.
what is your
yes,
take on that?
it's a huge issue as well. But my reflection is that we have to recover the feminine in both genders. It's not about female and men. It's about the feminine in the wholeness of human beings. What I've seen is that many people change their voices when they get in their own organizations to work. And I've seen, I've recorded the way people express themselves inside organizations. And it's very interesting that, because when you have lots of fear inside the organization, that quality of expression diminishes in the feminine way, and you introduce yourself in a masculine way to be able to cope with the context, you see. So it's very interesting. I think it's a huge issue. I think the gender issue is the first step to understand the loss of the feminine. You see, you have to go through this stage of recovering the empowerment of females inside communities, inside organizations. But the underlying pattern is the loss of the feminine in both genders. See, and it's very, very interesting topic. I don't know if there's another
Okay,
comment.
I don't know. Yes, sorry, Ronald, if there's someone else that has a question. If not, we can wrap it up. And I want to officially thank Ronald Lord for participating today. Ronald, it was amazing. And we will keep in contact for sure. You will see Ronald again, probably the next term. And if it's okay for everyone, we're gonna do a 15-minute break. So we will come back 3:30 CET. And we will connect again to the same Zoom link that you'll have in the calendar. And you, of course, you will have access to Ronald in the meantime. If you have any specific questions, you can contact him. And once again, Ronald, thank you for your talk. It was amazing. And we are really glad to have you today and in the next term.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. See you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon.
See you soon, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.